Rainman, with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise, was a poignant exploration of human connection, and the extraordinary within the ordinary, reveals the curious paradox that while we pursue perfection, it is often in our flaws and limitations that true genius resides. But let's move on from that, shall we? Forget the saccharine moral uplift, the gauzy attempts at humanizing a cocky young wheeler dealer through the gradual appreciation of his autistic siblings' gifts. Dismiss entirely the notion that we need the faintest wisp of moral pedagogy here. Instead, let us have Charlie, just Charlie, emerge as a berserker titan, a being of unfathomable strength and incoherent rage, rending the very fabric of reality as he blunders through the world without plan or purpose. This time there will be no tender brotherly dynamic worth mentioning, no earnest soul-searching, no allusions to emotional growth. What we want, what we should delight in, is the unbridled carnage that Charlie's monstrous presence entails. A spectacle of destruction so grand and unrelenting that all previous attempts at narrative or empathy become laughably irrelevant. Imagine, if you will, that once quiet opening scene at the lawyer's office. In the original version, you have men in suits, tasteful wood paneling, and a respectable hush. Now, as Charlie enters, before anyone can so much as say inheritance, the very temperature of the room seems to spike, as if reality itself is protesting his arrival. Charlie does not stride in. He thunders in, each footfall shaking the foundations, the occupants and furnishings trembling in sudden terror. His gaze is vacant, his speech a perversion of language, fragmented syllables, guttural snarls that grind at the ear. The staff try to hold on to their papers and maintain decorum, but Charlie's confused, meaningless outburst of sound instantly reduces the thick oak desk to particulate haze. The walls buckle, the lawyer's spectacles crumble into shimmering dust, and the legal documents, once the proud instruments of civilized inheritance, flash into oblivion as though consumed by an invisible supernova. There is nothing to discuss, no point to make, only the raw presence of Charlie and the utter pulverization of everything around him. Now let us behold the moment of meeting with Raymond. In the old film, this was a gentle unveiling, a careful introduction. Here it is an ambush of cosmic absurdity. The care facility that once housed neat routines and sympathetic staff is now a death trap caught in Charlie's wake. Doors twist and warp without him even touching them. Medical equipment implodes into specks of molten metal. The staff, those well-intentioned nurses and orderlies, scatter like leaves in a gale, their screams reduced to mute astonishment as one misplaced wave of Charlie's hand sends beams of light skittering off collapsing ceilings. Raymond sits amidst this maelstrom, repeating his lines. Judge Wapner, 4 o'clock, and so forth, barely audible over the roaring cacophony of structural failure and shrieking wind. Charlie might attempt a word, but it comes out as a monstrous choking sound that reverberates through brick and concrete, turning entire sections of the building into powder. He does not know who Raymond is, nor does he care. The scene is not about understanding, but about watching civilization's careful constructs dissolve before a lumbering, incoherent titan. Consider next the sequence in Las Vegas. Gone are the clever tricks with cards and the humorous tension of a suspicious pit boss. Now the casino is a palace of fragile glitz, an edifice of hollow luxury waiting to be obliterated. Charlie enters, and at a barely perceptible grunt, rows of slot machines warp into twisted lumps of scorched alloy. A cashier's cage crumples into a singular point and then winks out of existence altogether. Dealers, guards, hardened gamblers, none can even begin to respond. The thick carpeting rips away in spirals of disintegrating fibers. Neon lights erupt in silent bursts of radiation as Charlie, drooling and babbling nonsense, tries and fails to recall why he came here or what he might want. With every flex of his incomprehensible vocal cords, reality itself seems to curl in on itself. The audience, freed from any moral pretense, may now delight in the sheer spectacle of devastation. Let every utterance bring down ceiling panels. Let every twitch of Charlie's arm send roulette wheels spinning off their axles into subatomic oblivion. The entire affair ceases to be a story and becomes a kaleidoscopic display of unstoppable ruin. Move then to the road, that once iconic American setting of contemplation and personal growth. Forget all that. Now the landscape is a trembling canvas for Charlie's ravages. He lumbers through highways that fracture beneath the weight of his presence, chunks of asphalt liquefying, guardrails distorting into jagged, impossible shapes. Trees are uprooted and flung into the stratosphere by air currents generated from his ragged attempts to form words. Trucks collapse like cheap origami, their engines compressing into dense pellets of metal and sparks. There is no journey, no lesson learned, only the spectacle of arbitrary destruction, a travelling circus of devastation where Charlie's incomprehensible howls send wildlife scattering and mountains trembling. He may try to recall some past detail, a pancake, a toothpick, who knows. But what emerges is a noise so discordant it sets off seismic ripples that topple distant towns. The viewer, no longer burdened by pity or hope, can revel shamelessly in this operatic display of might unleashed without reason. Finally, we come to the so-called farewell. Once it was a tender goodbye at a train station. Now forget any notions of parting words or gentle handshakes. The train station is a mangled ruin, rails bent like taffy, locomotives crushed into shrieking vortices of shredded iron. Charlie drifts among the wreckage, his head lolling, half-formed syllables drooling from his mouth, each one a sonic explosion. The people who remain, who dared to stand by, are cast about like ragdolls. Glass shards hover in mid-air before vaporizing under the torsion of Charlie's presence. The concrete platforms disintegrate into molecular dust that never settles, swept into chaotic winds. Why would we need emotional closure here, when we can watch architecture and infrastructure fold, warp and vanish in a symphony of meaningless yet intoxicating violence? No moral purpose is served, no profound statement is made. There is only the ecstasy of watching an environment that once stood for order and meaning collapse under the unstoppable weight of Charlie's incomprehensible fury. How delicious it is to rid ourselves of the pretense that stories must better us, that characters must learn and grow, that viewers must be guided gently toward empathetic understanding. Instead, we have a feral feast of annihilation, a pure and unadulterated festival of chaos that neither explains itself nor asks for forgiveness. There is no appeal to justice or reason. The viewer is free to admire, gape, and yes, delight in the cataclysmic dance of raw force, stripping the world down to fragmented atoms. This is not about philosophical depth, nor moral lessons, nor even sly commentary. It is about the simple, brutal pleasure of witnessing something well beyond our ken, beyond subtlety, beyond rational measure. Charlie's sound, if one can call it a voice, turns halls into dust, landscapes into a churning flux of impossible matter states. Let the audience abandon its search for meaning and simply savour the scale of it all, the terror, the absurdity, the radiant stupidity of a being who cannot reason, cannot remember, cannot explain, and consequently leaves nothing but ruin. The old Rainman tried to teach us something about understanding and compassion. This new Rainman, with Charlie as its core, teaches us no lesson beyond the exquisite thrill of watching reality shatter before incomprehensible power. And for once, that is enough. Let the weak-minded search elsewhere for comfort. We shall remain here dazzled and enthralled as this nightmare unfolds, unconstrained by logic or sympathy, a pageant of beautifully meaningless catastrophe. 01.